If you have an item that you'd like to speak on, please be sure to fill out the input form. I have one speaker, but we're not going to call that person yet. Item 3.1 is approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll move to approve the agenda.
And is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Member Mock?
Aye.
Member Fitzpatrick?
Aye.
Member Raffner?
Aye.
Member Wooden?
Aye.
An aye for me. The motion has passed. Item 4.1 is a board review and approval of the 2020-2021 first interim budget report and LCFF budget overview for parents. So we will hear the presentation from Kathy Burks, and then we'll take the speaker after the presentation.
Hi, good evening, President Halpern, members of the board, and Dr. McClurg. This evening, I would like to present for your approval the 2021 first interim budget and the local control funding formula budget overview for parents. Before I go on to the agenda, I'd just like to share with the public that these reports are due by December 15th, and the district's regular board meeting is scheduled on the 16th, and therefore we are meeting this evening to meet the deadline at this special board meeting. Next slide, please. So in this presentation, we'll be reviewing the adopted budget versus the first interim, revenue and expenditure variances, also taking a look at the general fund summary, a multi-year projection, and looking ahead. Next slide, please. And next slide. So when we take a look at our revenue, at adoption, we were at nearly 64 million. We had a carryover balance of almost 117,000 and budget adjustments of approximately 2.6 million, which brought our first interim revenue to 66.6 million. Next slide. The variance that occurred was under our LCFF resources, which is the restoration of our basic aid reduction. And as you recall, we were unsure if we would have to take a reduction on our state aid that we were receiving, and so we anticipated a reduction to that revenue. Now we know that we're not receiving that reduction, so we increased the revenue for that. We received notification that we had a slight uptick to our property tax revenue from the 3.5% that was budgeted to 3.6%. And also in our federal revenues, we have increased it for our one-time federal CARES Act funds and also for our Title I carryover. I'd just like to mention that all the one-time funds that we received, federal and state, related to the pandemic and its intended purposes was used and spent in the current fiscal year. Next slide, please. Our other state revenue variances was also the increase for the one-time state learning loss mitigation funds. In addition to that, we had a reduction for our 6th grade camp, which the offset that we had would be in our expenses also. We had an adjustment to our SELPA funding, which was related to our ADA hold harmless for this year. We had an increase for our site donations, which we recognize in the budget when we receive it. And also our foundation contribution came in higher than what we budgeted. We had budgeted at 1 million and it actually came in at 1.1 million. Next slide. So at adoption, we were at 64 million. We had a carryover balance of 421,000 and budget adjustments of nearly 4.2 million to a total expenditures for first interim at 68 million. Next slide. So we had expenditure variance in salary and benefits, which we adjusted based upon what we knew actual through October 31, 2020. This included an increase of approximately 20 general education teachers. We had additional custodial staff, and we had additional administrative staff to assist with the launch program. Next slide. Under books and supplies, we had materials and supplies related to COVID-19, and also the carryover balance for donations and school site improvement. Our operating expenses recognize the COVID-19 related expenditures. And as our expenditures increased, we had an increase in our restricted maintenance due to the overall increase in the budget. Also, we're anticipating a contribution to our Child Nutrition Fund, Fund 13. Our ending fund balance, we will show a net decrease of 1.9 million. We started the year with 15 million, and we'll be reducing our ending fund balance to 13 million. Staff has updated the governing board of trustees with a presentation on school reopening budget priorities at the August board meeting. And in that presentation, we went into more detail as to the various expenditures that we were expending in order to have a safe reopening of school. And that estimated reduction was approximately 2.2 million. And so this update, you can see that with the adjustments, we are at a reduction of 2 million. Next slide, please. So as we look at the general fund summary, next slide, please, is a pie chart which shows that our sources of revenue under LCFF is at 83%. We recognize the increase in our federal revenues for the One-Time CARES Act, as well as the learning loss mitigation funds, which is under our state revenues. And also we have our STRS on behalf contribution of almost $3 million. Next slide, please. Under our expenditure summary, our total salary and benefits are almost 85% of our total budget. And next slide. So as we review our multi-year projection, next slide please, is based upon the School Services of California DART Board. In our property tax projection, we are anticipating an increase of 3% in 21-22, and then another 3% in 22-23. We're estimating our average daily attendance at 3,750. And also we recognize our average step and column increase at 2%, and any adjustments that occurs in our STRS and PERS contributions. Next slide, please. So when we take a look at our first projected year of 21-22, we have removed any one-time funding that was received in 2021. We assume that class size goes back to normal, and we remove the additional temporary certificated and classified staffing hired to address the pandemic, as well as any related expenditures that may have incurred, such as the tents. So as you can see in 21-22, we have total revenues of 66 million, and in 22-23, 67 million. Expenditures at 65 million for 2021, and 67 million in expenditures for 22-23. Next slide, please. So what that does is that we, in 21-22, will reflect a net increase in the fund balance of 148,000, and also in 22-23, a net increase to the fund balance of 5,000, almost $6,000. This shows that our restricted reserve percentage to be at approximately 19% in those 2 years, and with our current year at just barely 19%. Next slide, please. So looking ahead, we will continue to monitor our enrollment projection and staffing needs. We will always adjust based upon what, for STRS and PERS adjustments. We will review and look at our science curriculum adoption. We will await to see what our contribution for the foundation will be, and continue to reserve for our annual operations of Pacific Highlands Ranch School Number 9. Also, the anticipated Delmar Heights School rebuild, and we will continue to monitor that. Next slide, please. So the LCFF budget overview for parents is something new. That is a requirement under Senate Bill 98. The Learning Continuity and Attendance Plan, which is referred to as the LCP, was adopted by the board on the December 23rd regular board meeting. This LCFF budget overview for parents includes the detail of the revenue sources and also the expenditures, and will be posted on the website with the LCP. And next slide. And if I can answer any questions in regards to the first interim budget, I'd be happy to.
Thank you, Kathy. Let's take any clarifying questions, and then we'll take the speaker and we can have a discussion.
Thanks, Kathy, for organizing and putting it all together. Just a quick question. You indicate for the following year that all the expenditures for the pandemic were taken away. God forbid, and hopefully optimistically everything goes back to normal. What if it does not? Will we have resources available for all those things?
So any funding that we received from the state and the federal government, we expended this year. We knew that had to be spent this year for PPE, for lunches, to continue the service of lunch and anything related to the pandemic. So there is no carryover for that. And so those funds, unless something changes through the government, that they provide us something, that has been used. In regards to other resources, we would have to look to our reserves. We will at second interim receive another update in regards to our property taxes. I was happy to see that we got a slight increase, almost 200,000. And so we know that the housing market has been strong. We also know that there's not much inventory. So I'm waiting to see what comes from the county and as to what they project our property taxes to be increased by. So given that, our resources for anything would we have to come through our LCFF sources as well as our reserve.
So let's keep our fingers crossed. Hope it goes back.
Yes.
I have another quick question, just one last one. I was looking at the documents that were posted. One of them being, I guess, the first interim. It says SACS report, and it looks like it says District Certification Interim Report. And then I just kind of I don't know if you can help explain it to me. There are some of the things that say like not met and yes. Could you explain? Are those because of pandemic issues, or could you just explain what's going on there?
So this form is referred to as SACS, and it is the state form that we have to submit. And this is what is due to the county to review, and then it goes to the state. Those items that are not met have to do with the expenditures for the pandemic, as well as at adoption, we had made some assumptions, and they may have changed when we received more information as time went on. So, for example, we know that we were going to have a decrease in enrollment, and so our ADA was going to decrease. But what happened is that it was stated that our ADA was going to be hold harmless. So whatever it was in 1920 was going to stay in 2021. And that actually worked out to our benefit because our ADA was higher in 1920 than it was in 2021. So this those items that are referred to as under the criteria and standards review summary is also an attachment that is on the SACS forms that will give more detail as to those items.
So essentially, they're not things I should be concerned about. If it says like not met right now, it's a one-time only kind of situation.
It's a one, yes, and also just because of what is happening during this time, the assumptions we have made and the changes that are, yes.
Great. Thank you, Kathy.
You're welcome.
Kathy, on the enrollment projections, what are your projections for next year? Are you projecting flat enrollment? Are you doing real-time updates based upon what you think it's going to be? Or how are you projecting that right now?
So currently we use Davis Demographics to help with our demographic study, and we are looking at and reviewing with them because they have all the information in regards to birth rates and those items. And so we will be doing that analysis with them because of the changes that have happened. The international enrollment that we used to have is no longer there. And also just the reduction in kindergarten enrollment. So I work with, we work closely with Jason in looking at enrollment and capacity at our school sites. So at this time, we have projected enrollment to be flat as well as ADA as to what is happening this current year is our projection in the next 2 years, but we may be changing that once we finish the analysis.
Okay, thanks. And that's what I was wondering is because there may have been kind of an unusual drop in enrollment this year that we wouldn't expect next year.
Yes.
You're projecting based upon this year's numbers or based upon what historically Davis Demographics has told us is the right numbers for next year?
We are basing it upon this year's numbers and moving forward conservatively because if we base it too high, then that means we're going to anticipate more revenue than what may come in. But we will work with Davis Demographics to understand what they are also seeing in California and working with them more closely as to what our reasonable projections should be. So we will continue to do that projection conservatively at this point, but we'll probably have an update at second interim.
Okay. Are there more questions before we take a speaker? Okay, let's take Marianne Grossner. She's our only speaker.
Hey, Mary. Hi. I'm glad you guys just talked about the enrollment. So, because my comment was about the enrollment, because in your first interim report, you guys are talking about, how the enrollment is dropping, and you're kind of anticipating it to continue to drop. So, I'm just kind of curious to know why your certificated salaries have increased by $2 million for the first interim. And the other thing is there any way the district can put a notice on your home webpage stating the next board meeting? Because a lot of people were not aware of tonight's special board meeting. And are you aware that your neighboring school districts actually put a notice of their own board meetings on their website homepage? I mean, this would be really helpful and, more importantly, a greater act of transparency. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Okay, thank you for that. And I'll just add that we don't like to do budget meetings at a special board meeting, and unfortunately we were forced to do it because there was a new deadline that was opposed for this to be approved even before our regular budget meeting that would be at that December board meeting. So this is a meeting that has 24 hours notice. So I think we would all very much like to see these at the regular board meetings whenever possible. And thank you for your suggestions. Okay, I have just another question. I just want to confirm something, Kathy, and then we'll see who else has questions before we take a vote on this. 2023, so you mentioned that reflects Pacific Highlands Ranch opening. So at that point, you are showing their operating budget, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, just wanted to confirm that. Okay. What other questions do folks have? we need a motion to approve the 2020-21 first interim budget report as of October 31st, 2020, and the LCFF budget overview for parents, which is in the attachments. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, roll call vote. Member Mock?
Aye.
Member Fitzpatrick?
Aye.
Member Raffner?
Aye.
Member Wooden?
Aye.
An aye for me. The motion has passed. Item 5.1 is adjournment of the meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll move to adjourn.
Second?
I'll
I'll
second.
second. Oh, go ahead, Scott.
Scott? Okay. Roll call vote. Member Mock?
Aye.
Member Fitzpatrick?
Aye.
Member Raffner?
Aye.
Member Wooden?
Aye.
An aye for me. We're adjourning our shortest board meeting ever at 5:28 p.m. Everybody have a good evening.
Good night.